Have you ever noticed that bad guys in movies lately feel a bit off? We used to have villains like Frollo and Commander Rourke, who made our hearts race because their evil was something we could actually run into in the streets. But now that danger and realism are disappearing, and this is crazy because we're also losing the truth about what it means to be a hero. So how and why have we lost the realism of villains, and how can we get it back? The first step to understanding the lost realism of villains is to look at the dynamism of Judge Claude Frollo's villainy. He starts off as a man who believes he is right, and that belief is where everything begins. When he chases that woman through the streets, he is thinking like a man on a mission who believes he is protecting the city by doing what is necessary. Even after he kills her, he still tries to justify his actions.
I'm guiltless. She ran, I pursued.
That is important because it sets the pattern for everything that follows. He agrees to raise Quasimodo, but not out of kindness, you see. Dude was just afraid because of what the Archdeacon told him about the eyes of Notre Dame watching him. Then he raises the boy in isolation, feeding him, yes, but also controlling and manipulating him. He gives him just enough care to keep him dependent and obedient. You've seen that kind of behavior before. Someone who helps you, but also traps you. Someone who says they care, but keeps you small. Then Esmeralda shows up, and now the real test for Frollo begins. He wants to stay pure and righteous because it's his identity. So when that lustful desire shows up, it creates a problem that leaves him with two options. He can accept that the feeling is his, or he can reject it. He rejects it. So now he needs somewhere to place the blame, and he places it on her. This was convenient for him because of how he saw himself, and also because it cemented the bigotry he felt towards the Romani people. That is how he justifies hunting her, burning homes, and hurting innocent people, because in his head, he is not the problem. She and every other Romani is. The crazy thing is you can actually follow every step and see how one thought leads to another, then to another, then to his wicked actions. And the truth is, this kind of dynamic didn't come out of nowhere because history has already given us people like this. Men like Tomás de Torquemada during the Spanish Inquisition believed they were protecting faith and purity. They punished, tortured, and even killed people, all while believing they were doing something right. Similar pattern: belief in purity, fear of corruption, blaming others, and then taking violent action. That is why Frollo works. He is a familiar or realistic evil. We see this same clear logical path with Commander Rourke in Atlantis, even though his motive might be different. Rourke is a mercenary, and his motivation is simple greed. He finds an enchanted city and decides to steal its heart, even if that means every person there will die. He even tells our hero, Milo, that everything in a museum is basically stolen, so why shouldn't he get his turn? This is the logic of desire at its most realistic. Rourke is just like the real-world robber barons or certain historical colonial explorers who went into new lands to take everything of value and leave the people with nothing. Men driven by greed and power who took what they wanted without caring who suffered. You can think of conquerors and opportunists who treated entire lands like prizes to be claimed. Someone like Leopold II of Belgium, who exploited the Congo for wealth, fits that same pattern of taking without regard for human cost. But then the logic starts to break down in modern movies. We moved away from these clear, realistic patterns and started getting villains like Prince Hans from Frozen. At first, he felt perfect. You know, charming, kind, and helpful. He connects with Anna quickly, steps up when the kingdom is in trouble, and looks like the kind of person you can trust. Then, suddenly, everything flips when he reveals that it was all part of a plan to take the throne.
If only there was someone out there who loved you.
But the problem is, the audience was not allowed to follow that plan. His desire stays totally hidden for most of the story. No hints, nothing. His decisions are happening, but you cannot see the chain behind them. So when the reveal comes, it doesn't land. And that is where realism starts to slip, because realism is simple. It works like a small equation in your head. Desire, then logic, then action. With Frollo and Rourke, you see it clearly, but with Hans, that chain is hidden. Now, to be fair, the idea of a twist villain is not the problem, since it has worked before on multiple occasions. Look at Lotso from Toy Story 3. He seems kind at first, but as you watch him, you start to notice control, bitterness, and anger. There are hints before his reveal that you can trace back and connect to that realistic pattern of evil. Same thing with Turbo from Wreck-It Ralph. His obsession with staying important shows up in his behavior long before the reveal. So when the truth comes out, it clicks. You can follow their thinking, and that is the difference. So when we talk about the lost realism of villains, this is where it begins. We stop believing in villains the moment we can no longer follow their thoughts and desires. But even when we can, two other things can quickly take the realism away. In a realistic world, evil feels dangerous because it shows up and stays in control while it is there. You feel that the moment Lord Shen walks into a scene in Kung Fu Panda 2. He carries himself like someone who already understands the outcome. He speaks calmly, moves with purpose, and steals the spotlight effortlessly.
Now we've got the pleasantries out of the way, please leave my house.
That is presence. You can feel his weight on the story before he even makes a move. Then you start seeing how he backs that presence up. Shen heard a prophecy that a panda would beat him, so he tried to stop that fate by being proactive. He also knew that to take over China, he would have to be strategic. Being just a kung fu master wouldn't cut it when there are a dozen of them in every town. So he would have to come up with something new and extremely effective in overpowering kung fu. This was what led to the unprecedented discovery of the cannon, a technological marvel by all accounts. Shen was so efficient, he pushed the hero to find a brand new level of peace and skill just to beat him. That is a villain who is good at his job and looks good doing it. But can we say this isn't realistic? Absolutely not, because that kind of presence and efficiency exists in real life too. Somebody like Napoleon was also widely considered a very charismatic leader whose personality helped him maintain control over his troops. He equally used artillery, some might even say he perfected the use of cannons. But let's not also forget how he also led his men into enemy lines, never shying away from combat. That same energy shows up in Shen. You are watching someone who knows what he is doing. But now, that realism has been lost on villains like King Magnifico. Magnifico starts out as a leader who seems like he's doing a good job. He built a safe city where people are happy and don't even have to pay taxes. But then the story suddenly forces him to become a bad guy. Instead of being a smart leader who stays ahead of the hero, he starts acting like a grumpy child. The moment a teenager named Asha asks him a hard question, he starts having emotional outbursts and singing songs about how nobody says thank you to him. Magnifico has no presence because he isn't intimidating. If anything, he's just a cute guy with a nice fashion sense who winds up in the wrong show. In a realistic world, a king who has ruled for years would be an expert at handling people who disagree with him, but Magnifico becomes whiny. The movie also makes him so unreliable so that the hero can win without actually having to become a stronger or better person. Asha remains who she is from the start of the movie to the end. No character arc or growth. When you compare Shen and Magnifico, you see the lost realism clearly. Shen is a man who was exiled and worked for decades to build a plan that almost worked. He only lost because the hero found a legendary inner peace. Real life is full of people who are very good at being bad. They are organized, calm, and strategic. So when movies give us villains who are clumsy or who make nonsensical choices, they are creating a moral safety net where we don't have to worry because the bad guy is too silly to actually be a danger. Now, keep that moral safety net in mind because it might help us understand the next way we are beginning to lose realistic villains. In the last minutes of The Princess and the Frog, we see Dr. Facilier crying about needing a little more time.
I just need a little more time. No,
he is begging for his life as demons, aka his friends from the other side, drag his ass into their realm to pay his debts. It looks like a very awful way to go, doesn't it? We can even say that his fate is one of the most disturbing and dark deaths for a Disney villain, as he is dragged into an eternal haunted void. Now, if you just tuned into the movie at that point, you might feel sorry for him and ask what the heck this guy did. Basically, you would give him your sympathy. But here's the problem. This looks to be what studios like Disney are doing these days with their villains. It seems like they arrived at the end of a movie where a villain is supposed to be facing the consequences of their actions, and then decided to sympathize with them because they are unaware of all the bad things the person did. Take a look at Raya and the Last Dragon, for example. Namaari is a princess who spends the entire movie betraying everyone she meets. When she was just a kid, she pretended to be Raya's friend just to steal a magic gem, and that one choice broke the world and turned millions of people into stone statues. Then, as an adult, she keeps hunting Raya and eventually fires an arrow that leads to the death of Sisu, the very last dragon. Because of Namaari, the water disappears and the world is about to be wiped out by monsters. Her actions carry huge consequences that hurt everyone. Yet at the end of the movie, she is pardoned for all the evil she committed. She doesn't have to face any punishment or make up for the lives she ruined. Everyone just accepts her as part of the group. This feels wrong because in the real world, you can't just kill the last hope for the planet and then get a hug and a good job at the end. And you can't expect people to just trust you all of a sudden after you've continuously betrayed everyone. But to make matters worse, the movie used that moral safety net we spoke about earlier. They did it so that all that was lost, whether humans or dragons, were suddenly restored to life. That way, the bad things done by Namaari suddenly disappear, so everyone can live happily ever after. We see this same problem with Te Kā in Moana. Te Kā is a giant, terrifying monster made of rage and lava who is trying to destroy the world. She is a massive threat who creates a dark curse that kills all the fish and the plants on every island. If Moana doesn't stop her, everyone will starve to death. But then the movie reaches the resolution and we find out Te Kā is not a villain. Once Moana gives her back a green stone heart, the fire monster just disappears and becomes a kind goddess again. There are no lasting scars on the world, or the characters, and everything is green again. The evil was just a temporary glitch in the system, like a computer that needed to be turned off and on again. This kills the realism of the threat because it suggests evil is just a misunderstanding that can be switched off. It tells kids that bad guys just lost their favorite toy and need a reminder to be nice. Whereas in a realistic world, evil leaves scars. When you look back at Dr. Facilier, you see why his dark ending was actually fair. He was a guy who chose to be cruel every single day. He tricked Prince Naveen and turned him into a frog. He manipulated Lawrence into being his servant. He killed Ray and even planned to kill Big Daddy. He also tried to use Tiana's love for her dead father to trick her into giving up her soul. But his biggest crime was what led to his downfall. He dealt with demons, promising them that they could eat the souls of everyone in the whole city of New Orleans just so he could become rich and powerful. He played a dangerous game, and he lost. Real life works just like that too. There is a man in history named Victor Lustig, who was a lot like Dr. Facilier. This guy was a very smooth talker and a con artist who traveled around tricking people out of their money. He was so bold that he actually sold the Eiffel Tower twice. He spent his whole life making deals and lying to stay ahead, never caring about the lives he ruined as a result. But just like Facilier in the movie, his debt eventually came due. He was caught by the police and sent to Alcatraz. He would later die in a hospital after contracting pneumonia. There was no magic goddess to turn him back into a good person. He had to pay the price for the path he chose. When movies stop showing this, they stop being realistic. When a villain like Namaari does terrible things and gets a happy ending anyway, it tells us that actions don't have consequences. But the painful part is that sometimes movies just choose to remove villains altogether, as seen in Luca, Strange World, and Encanto. Regardless of their best intentions, when studios do this every time, it just feels like they are pretending evil doesn't actually exist at all. It feels like they're trying to erase the idea of malice, when in the real world we have to deal with bullies and people who don't care who they hurt. You see, if movies keep saying that everyone is actually good deep down and just misunderstood, they stop being a mirror for the real world. Realism dies when we pretend that every conflict is just a glitch in the system. The truth is, we need villains because they represent the hard things we have to face. Without a real villain, the hero doesn't have a mountain to climb. When we erase the villain, we erase the chance for the hero to show how brave they can truly be. That is why these modern stories, even if they are great sometimes, often feel like they are missing a heartbeat. They are missing the reality that sometimes you have to stand up to something truly bad to make things right. And this is why this last bit about the lost realism of villains is very important. The big question we have to answer is why we lost the realism of villains in the first place. Well, it turns out that this shift connects to a wider creative mindset that values subversion. Storytelling rules that once felt stable started to feel like things that needed to be challenged. If older films used villains to push the story forward, then newer films tried to prove that stories could work without that structure. The focus moved toward themes and ideas first, characters second. At the same time, modern ideology in storytelling started to lean into shared responsibility and emotional causes. Writers became more interested in exploring how systems shape people, how trauma spreads, and how conflict can come from inside relationships instead of from a clear outside force. That direction created thoughtful stories, but it also softened the edge of character-driven evil because when everything becomes explainable through emotion or circumstance, the space for pure intent gets smaller. The effect of all this is easy to see. Instead of watching someone choose destruction, you watch situations unfold. Instead of confronting a mind that wants something dangerous, you watch confusion build between people. For some viewers, especially younger audiences, this creates distance from reality. But the good news is that we can change it. In fact, we're starting to see movies that bring back the realistic, unapologetic villain. Guys like Big Jack Horner are the perfect way to fix this. Jack tells us himself that he had loving parents and a great life, but he still turned out to be a megalomaniac who thinks he is the only person in the world who matters.
All of the magic in the world for me.
He treats his workers like they are disposable tissues, and he laughs when people get hurt. Because he is so clearly dangerous, the story feels real. We stay on the edge of our seats because we know he won't stop until someone stops him. Even Disney is starting to see the light again. Take the Linksley family in Zootopia 2, for example. They are a wealthy family of cats who act like they are the heroes of the city, but their wealth and power is actually built on a foundation of lies and murder. The family patriarch, Ebenezer, stole the plans for the city from a reptile and framed her to get her out of the way. The Linksleys are a dark reflection of a good family. Instead of taking care of people, they use their power to stay on top and hide the truth. They aren't misunderstood or sad, and they are perfect that way. They show us that evil can hide in a big mansion just as easily as it hides in the shadows. So, to bring realism back, movies need to stop apologizing for their villains. We need to remember that having a villain who is smart, efficient, and truly bad makes the hero's journey mean something. When we see a character like Jack Horner or the Linksleys, we realize that some fights are worth fighting, because the threat is real. Basically, realism is about showing the truth that choices have weight, and that some people choose the wrong path. When movies embrace that truth again, the magic of storytelling comes back to life, and we get to see heroes who are truly brave once more. But while the Linksleys show us that a real threat makes for a real story, they also settle an old score for the Zootopia franchise. If you want to see how this family finally fixed a huge mistake from the first movie, check out our last video. We explain exactly why the twist in Zootopia 2 works so well, while the one in Zootopia 1 just didn't.